the WPT is doing a gigantic free roll here on December 13th at the Win. It's a $5 million free roll. All you have to do to get into the drawings that I have for free seats, they've given me a bunch of golden passports, is head over to ClubWPTGOLD.com and sign up with the code BART. Each seat is worth at least $2,500. And it's my understanding that if people don't show up and they've won, they're not putting people in. So if only 1,500 people show up, each seat's going to be worth like $3,300. Hello, Daniel. You are up first, sir.
Hey Bart, how's it going on your end?
Hey, what's up, Daniel? All right, so where are you playing out of?
This is at the Gardens Casino, which is where I frequent in Southern California.
Gardens in Hawaiian Gardens, California. And what's the size of the game here?
This is the regular 5-5 game with the 600 cap.
So 5-5, 600 cap. Okay. 5-5, 600 cap. And how deep are you? You said you're like 890, if I remember, something like that, right? Is that right?
Around 1.1k, which is similar to the main villain.
Okay.
And then the VIP in this hand is short stacked at 400.
Right. And then there's like a mix of stacks, I remember, something like that, right?
Yeah. But
Okay.
besides the VIP, the rest of us are similar at around the 1.1k mark.
Okay. All right. Start us off here. 5-5 Gardens, 600 cap. Again, I mean, if you've been with me, we've been doing this show almost, we started early 2017. So it's been, I don't know, like what, 8 or 9 years. I mean, I always talk about these setups, right? Southern California live games below, even at this level, at the kind of a shallow buy-in. It's a very hard game to beat in the sense that the amount that they take from each pot is quite large over the long term because it's a flat drop. And of course, a flat drop means that it's not a percentage of the pot. They will take the entire amount that they're going to take on the flop, with a caveat where they actually take, I think, an extra $1 on turn and on river, depending on what the game is. But it could be up to 8+1. And the problem with that is that if you play small pots, like you'll commonly see like somebody limp in at 5-5, now all of a sudden it's $15. They're going to take 8 right off the top. That is something that I noticed, though, from California, that people will be like, do you want to just chop it? They don't do that in Boston, actually, with a rake. I see a lot of late limping from late position, but it kind of makes sense because Boston's a rake, so you're not getting, the whole amount taken from the pot. But, there obviously are different game setups in LA. You have $1,000 buy-ins, you have $500 buy-ins. Gardens is a little bit in between here with the $600 buy-in. So, okay.
Yeah, limping less than 4 ways is pretty frowned upon, and unfortunately Gardens is a $2 pre-flop even if you chop from the small blind, so it's pretty atrocious.
Right, even if you raise and take it, you have $2 taken, right? One for modified drop and one for bad beat jackpot too. That's another thing.
That's correct. Yeah, even if you chop, $2 the small blind still has to pay. So
which is kind of interesting too, because I wonder, it's just like one of these things. I mean, I remember some guys brought up like the jackpot like in court, like way back when, 15, 20 years ago, and some guys brought a lawsuit up against one of the casinos about bad beat jackpot. And apparently, like, you can always request to have like a dealer literally just deal out cards so that it's not a contest because of contest rules. But I do wonder how they get away, and I wonder if it could be challenged legally, how they take a drop for the bad beat when there's no actual hand, when they're, raise and take it. It's the only place in the country where that goes on. But anyways, okay, enough of my diatribe. All right, let's start it off pre-flop here.
Okay, so the VIP limps under the gun. Our middle position is the main villain. He also limps, and we raise on the button with ace king off, ace of clubs, king of spades.
Okay, so an ISO raise over 2 limps, and I would imagine
30.
you making it 30. Oh, good. I was gonna say I would make it 20 in this game, and I would add a big blind per limper. Okay, yep.
Yeah, 30, and then small blind, he flats, and the limper calls, and the middle position also calls.
So UTG and AMP call. So we're off to 1, 2, 3, 4 ways. You're going to ISO 2 people with obviously a hand that you're going to raise from any position anyways. Small blind flat, and then the limper's call. How deep is the small blind and the VIP?
Small blind and the MP limper, we are all about 1.1k effective. Okay. And then the VIP, he's pretty relevant in the hand. He's short stacked at 400, but he's playing 100% of his hands. He's just calling every single hand.
Yeah.
And he's already probably gone through maybe 4 buy-ins of 500 each.
God. See, never raises preflop. Huh? And the funny thing is that it might even be a little bit better if a guy never raises preflop and then throws in limp re-raises. But some of these guys don't even do that. They might raise like aces and kings from up front. All right, so it's 100 and probably 15, or it's probably actually more like 110 after the drop. We'll put it at 110. Okay.
The flop comes Jack of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds.
Jack of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds. Hero with ace of clubs, king of spades. Now, I don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but I will say here, Daniel, that if it gets checked to you, I would not c-bet. I would not c-bet here. I just think there's too many players in the hand. These games are a lot more value oriented. I mean, you do actually have some stacked up. We talk about the cbet bluffing matrix at Crush Live Poker, which is sort of a list of kind of things to look for. A list, I like to call them factors of when we want to cbet bluff as the preflop raiser. Number of players is probably the most important factor. And once you've got 3 people in there, I mean, occasionally you can throw in some cbet bluffs against 3 people on sort of top pairish dynamic boards like a 9-deuce-3, but I would not be betting if it gets checked to you here.
Yeah, I agree. My image was actually really good. Probably rated maybe like a 7 or an 8 at least. But just knowing that the VIP is not folding if he has any piece of the flop, it did check to me and we check it back.
Okay, so it gets checked to Hero, and Hero checks it back. And I know that Daniel is a CLP website subscriber. The reason why I mentioned that is because he mentioned his image on a rating like an 8 out of 10, because the cbet bluffing matrix will say, okay, it's a 2-part matrix. You take all these factors, number of players, position, board texture, effective stack size. You rate the situation on a scale of like 1 to 10. And then you take your image and you rate your short-term image in terms of winning or losing on a scale of 1 to 10. And then if those 2 things add up to more than 10, you can make a case for c-betting. Now, in this case, I would say c-bet factors on the 1 side is probably like a 1 or a 2 here. And so your image would have to be just like 9 out of 10, in order to like hit that 10. That's the point system that we come up with to c-bet. So even though you said your image was really good, it was just the board and the situation was just too far out there, right, for you to c-bet bluff.
Yeah, I think if I had the ace of diamonds, I might have stabbed to see what happens. But with black ace king, I just check it back.
Okay. All right, let's move to the turn.
The turn is the king of clubs.
Oh, interesting. So backdoor clubs come out. Jack of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, king of clubs. Hero with the ace of clubs, king of spades. Hits top pair. Okay.
And the small blind now leads for 35.
That is always interesting. I always think that that's interesting. Now, it's a little bit... I think that there are probably more leads. I would say multi-way, just because there's no guarantee the preflop raiser is going to bet the turn. But I do always find it interesting when out of position comes out swinging on a card that will traditionally hit the preflop raiser sort of flop check back range. And I always talk about like everybody puts somebody on ace king. Well, the hero actually has ace king here. So if you were the small blind and you had 2 pair plus, you'd be like, he's probably going to bet here or maybe take a stab at it as a bluff. Why not check, go for a check raise? Of course, because there's 4 people, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. And in me, in the small blind actually here, like say I flopped like, I'm trying to think of something that I might be here in the small blind. Let's say that I had like pocket 7s and I decide not to 3-bet here out of the small blind. I might actually lead this card instead of going for a check raise because of the preflop configuration. Because, if it gets naturally checked to you and you bet, now I'm going to raise and I'm going to drive these people out to my left. And this card is not like it's a deuce, where if it was a deuce and we had a set of 7s, we could possibly check because maybe somebody in the field is going to bet a jack, which was top pair on the flop that was naturally checked to the preflop raiser. But now the jack's not going to bet because the turn is a king. So I actually could have some leads here with some thick value hands if I was the small blind because it's so multi-way. All right, small blind goes 35.
Yeah, small blind leads. And his range, obviously, he can still have all of the thick nutted hands, but just based on sizing and player tendencies, he has been stabbing when shown weakness, so I didn't take the bet as too much of a strength. But the VIP, he calls without too much thinking, so he has some piece of the board, I guess. And he doesn't have to have a piece of the board either. And then, surprisingly, the second MP also overcalls.
So the MP calls. Wow, okay, this is interesting. So, and it gets over to you, and the pot's like 105 plus 110. It's like 215, 35 for you to call. It is a weak lead, and you start to ask yourself, well, am I going to lose some value here from all the draws if I don't raise here? As played, usually in a spot like this, when out of position leads and you don't have two pairs, the preflop raiser, and you've just hit top pair, usually you're going to call. I might raise here some of the time against some weaker competition, especially those people that are never going to put me in a world of hurt. Like if the small blind is a guy that's just like a typical player at this level, and he's not going to like bet 3-bet like 8-9 of diamonds, queen 10 of clubs against me and fold me off my hand, I could see raising here. Because the board is so wet, I think you're going to get called by all kinds of things. And if you just call, you can see a lot of action killing cards come out at the end. It would be very strange for me to ever think that the UTG or the MP guy has you beaten here with this texture and just goes call, call. The only person that really can have, I would say most of the time, that might have you beaten is the small blind. So could you make a case for actually raise folding against the small blind when typical people just call with worse and draws? I don't know. What did you do?
I got a little greedy. I raised to 235 for value.
Well, I just talked through it. I don't necessarily know if it's greedy. Now let's think about your sizing here. So you're basically making just under a pot size raise, right? I mean, yeah, just a little bit under a pot size raise. It's not egregious.
Yeah, based on the 35 call though, people, this population would maybe go to like 150, 135. They usually add on a black chip on top or something like that. So the sizing was a little bit big in the moment, but I thought it could still get called by, specifically the VIP actually, because he overcalled. I thought he was not folding.
And then of course, like if the small blind folds and the VIP just gets it in, you're happy to get it in with the VIP, right? I'm sure.
Best case scenario, yep.
All right, so you go to 235, okay.
And then now the small blind goes into the tank, so I'm like slightly worried now. And he tanks maybe a full minute and then flats the 235.
All right, so small blind calls, okay.
And then the VIP does not think for too long, and he also overcalls.
Okay, UTG calls,
as expected.
Yeah.
And then now the MP who overcalled second to act on the flop, he now goes into the tank for maybe a full minute. And then he, most surprisingly, he tanks and he back jams for 1050.
Holy shit. And I'm saying holy shit because that's a huge bet in this game, right?
It is, yeah, 200 bigs.
Yeah, so this is a back jam. You want to call it back raise. Like all these terms are kind of made up, but basically a back raise is when somebody calls initially on a certain street and then actually re-raises. So re-raise is a raise. So this guy called, you raised, and now he's re-raising you. That is a back raise. You can call that a back jam. I don't know, man. I got to tell you, I mean, sometimes people talk about like, well, what stakes are you comfortable at playing? I think I jam here all day long. I just can't imagine how the MP guy has a real hand here. I feel like this might be a lot of possibly like some sort of draw that is not the nut draw, maybe some sort of combo draw. And he feels like he needs to clean up his equity here, maybe against the small blind. Say he had like, I mean, it's interesting because if he had a huge combo draw, you might think that he might raise the turn initially. Say he had like 8-9 of clubs. That might be a good example, right? 8-9 of clubs, it's a double gutter on the flop, turns a flush draw. There's a lot of things he might want to clean up here. So that's what this kind of seems like to me. I mean, at this point, I mean, the pot is what, 235, 470. It's like 700, it's like 800. And then he back jams for like that. So it's like 1800, like 800 or so for you to call, right? Like something like that. I think I just get
1875, 815 to call was the price.
I think I just get it. I mean, honestly, now this is interesting because I'm surprised. People in the live chat saying, you get out of there. Wow, puke, run for the hills. Really? I don't know, man. Like, what does the MP guy have here that's played this way?
Yeah, it put me in the tank for a while because I was like, You flatted the 35. What could you possibly have that's not like a mega draw right here, right? Like what thick hands could you have that does not raise the flop versus the lead and the VIP's call?
Now somebody does make a good point though. Yago in the live chat says you could still be behind though to like the small blind. Like the small blind, when you think about like, I mean, it's a small blind flat for 30. I don't know how wide the small blind plays pre. The only two pair he should have is like a hand like King Jack. If that, you block that. And I don't know, is the small blind just calling versus a raise with King Jack when he leads and then you raise it up to 235? I don't know. And I feel like a lot of sets are going to bet 3-bet like 7s and 5s. There aren't a whole lot of 2-pair there. Like, I mean, is this guy wide? Can he have like 7-5 suited from the small blind?
Probably just sets and king jack, but another reason why he would flat is because he also knows that the VIP is calling. So I don't think the small blind, even if he led with the nutted hand, he would 3-bet the turn. So I was actually more worried about the small blind than the back jam actually.
Well, I mean, you could make a case. Listen, if you think the dynamic is there where you think the small blind is actually going to be flatting a lot of strong hands to your raise, then I think it's much, much closer. Because obviously, like, there's a gigantic overlay in the pot here in the sense that, I mean, even if you have the best hand now, people are going to have like a bunch of equity against you. And if the small blind is I mean, if you're drawing dead against a set here, right? I mean, you're drawing absolutely dead here against a set. So maybe on the surface, it's actually a little bit more close than I thought. I just didn't think that the small blind, and then again, like if he V-pips, if the small blind starts to V-pip pretty wide here, where he's going to like show up with some like up and down 2-pair types of holdings and 7-5 suited, I can even get on board more with a fold. But I actually think it's a lot closer than people think in the chat. James Roth says it's a call at Gardens. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, man. So what did you end up doing?
It's really player dependent, I think. And then what was interesting is the VIP maybe had $150 left at this point, and then while I'm tanking, he's like, "Well, I'm not folding for this amount, you know that." So you get to see it anyways. So I was really 50-50, but I do end up making the fold. And
Okay.
then the small blind. Now, even after thinking while I was in the tank, he's retanks.
Oh, that's terrible. I mean, how can the small blind, if the small blind is tanking again, that's really bad for you. Bad for you in the sense that you must have him beaten here, right?
Exactly.
Because how can the small? I mean, is the small blind gonna like retank with like 7-5? Like that's the worst 2-pair hand he can have, right?
Right.
I just
small blind retanks, and then he also folds.
Oh my god.
And then the VIP calls off for 150 or so. And then the river, I think, was a non-flush completing clean card.
Like a 3, like an offsuit 3 or something? Or I'll put it Deuce of Hearts. Okay.
Yeah. And the reveal, should we go ahead with the reveal?
Yeah, what are the hands?
Yeah, so the backjammer limper, he actually had 7-7 for slow plate.
Wow. So the MP has 7-7.
So I was pretty glad after the fact, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the small blind, he had king X of diamonds. He said he turned top pair and then had diamonds as well. So maybe like a king 10 of diamonds, king 9 of diamonds hand.
Well, it's interesting because we never really, did you really ever think that the MP guy was all that strong? Because I kind of just like washed over that.
When he flatted the turn, I was just like, dude, I don't know what you could possibly have, but I think I have you beat.
Yeah. Huh. That's definitely an interesting one. He might have gotten that MP guy might have got my money there, to be honest with you. And the weird thing about that is it's just like unless the MP guy like somehow, and there's no way to know this, right? Because you're not always raising when you hit ace king on the turn. It's just like I think the MP guy got really, really lucky because of the situation. But this is not how you want to play that hand if you're the MP guy. Because most of the time, either you're just going to call, and then there's just going to be so many cards that are just going to kill all the action. And then the draws just whiff out. So he loses value on the turn from a very connected board with a lot of draws. And he doesn't get a whole lot of clean rivers either. So I'm not really a big fan of the way that MP played it. I think he got really lucky with the situation.
Yeah, he played it way too trappy, but it worked out. But I guess the lesson of the day is sometimes there are slow plays and 200 big shoves are never bluffs.
That is definitely consideration for sure. Thank you very much for the call, Daniel. That was a good one. I appreciate it.